think you know Anderson Silva, the Spider, the man who ruled the UFC middleweight division like a ghost in human form. For years, he was untouchable, slipping punches like they were in slow motion, finishing opponents with artistry that made fighting look like ballet. He wasn't just a champion, he was the standard of greatness. But behind the highlight reels and that confident smile lies a story most fans never hear. A story of pain, heartbreak, and human struggle. What happened to Anderson Silva beyond the cage isn't just about injuries or age. It's about betrayal, depression, identity, and the crushing weight of trying to stay perfect in a world that loves to see you fall. Anderson Silva was born in São Paulo, Brazil, in 1975. His early life was far from glamorous. He grew up in poverty, raised mostly by his aunt and uncle, in a working-class neighborhood where opportunities were scarce. His parents couldn't afford much, so young Anderson found joy in simple things. Running barefoot through the streets, playing soccer, dreaming big. But when he discovered martial arts, something inside him shifted. Watching Bruce Lee films and local fighters on TV, he found a form of expression that gave meaning to his struggles. He began training in Taekwondo, then Capoeira, and later Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu. It wasn't about fame, it was survival, a way to escape the gravity of a life that offered little. By his early 20s, Silva had stepped into the world of professional fighting. His rise wasn't easy. He lost fights, faced financial hardship, and even considered quitting. He's spoken about times when he barely had enough money to feed his family. But his persistence was unbreakable. In 2006, when he entered the UFC, few could predict what would follow. Within months, he knocked out Chris Lieben, dismantled Rich Franklin, and began one of the most dominant reigns in MMA history. His 16-fight win streak inside the UFC remains one of the greatest achievements in combat sports. Fans saw his genius, the timing, the creativity, the confidence. But few understood the fear and pressure that came with it. He once said, "When you are at the top, everyone wants to take your head." Every fight became a test, not just of skill, but of his soul. But even legends bleed. And Anderson Silva's battles didn't stop at the cage door. In 2013, during his rematch with Chris Weidman, Silva suffered one of the most gruesome injuries in MMA history, his leg snapping in half on live television. The moment was shocking. Millions of fans watched as he screamed in agony, his body collapsing under the weight of what seemed like the end of his career. Doctors told him that returning to fighting might be impossible. For most, it would have been, but Silva refused to accept that. After surgery, months of rehabilitation, and relentless pain, he made the impossible comeback. Yet, behind that miracle return was a man fighting darkness, depression, self-doubt, and fear that he'd never be the same again. He later admitted that the recovery wasn't just physical, it was deeply emotional. Every time he stepped into the gym, he felt anxiety, the fear of another injury, of disappointing fans, of being forgotten. For someone who had built his life around perfection, the thought of decline was unbearable. Silva's wife and children stood by him, but he confessed that during those years, he questioned everything, even who he was outside of fighting. "When fighting stops," he once said, "you look in the mirror and don't know the man you see." As the years went on, Silva's career entered a turbulent phase. Losses piled up. Weidman, Bisping, Cormier, Adesanya, and critics began to say he should retire. But Anderson's pride and love for the sport kept pulling him back. He wasn't chasing money or fame anymore, he was chasing purpose. In one interview he said, I fight because it's who I am. If I stop, I die inside. But that inner fire also brought heartbreak. His body was aging, the reflexes slowing, and for a man whose style relied on perfection, that reality was devastating. Watching him lose, sometimes controversially, sometimes painfully, broke fans' hearts, but no one's more than his own. And then came the storm of 2015, a failed drug test that threatened to destroy his legacy. Silva tested positive for performance-enhancing substances following his comeback fight against Nick Diaz. For fans, it was shocking. For Anderson, it was humiliating. He maintained his innocence, claiming the result came from contaminated supplements. Still, his reputation took a massive hit. Years of hard work and respect seemed to vanish overnight. The man who represented purity in the sport, who once stood as a symbol of honor and skill, suddenly became a target for ridicule and doubt. "People forgot who I was," he said later. "They wanted to believe the worst." That period nearly broke him. The suspension, the criticism, and the self-questioning all took a toll that fans never saw. Outside the octagon, Silva's personal life also carried quiet pain. Fame had its dark side: constant pressure, media scrutiny, and emotional distance from family. He has often spoken about missing moments with his children, of not being there when they needed him most. His wife, Diane, supported him through everything, but even she admitted the sport consumed him. For decades, Silva lived inside a world where every ounce of identity was tied to fighting. When the lights dimmed and the crowd disappeared, he had to face a haunting question. Who is Anderson Silva if he's not the Spider? After finally leaving the UFC in 2020, Silva began a new chapter in boxing. Surprisingly, he showed flashes of his old brilliance, defeating Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. in 2021 at 46 years old. It was a beautiful reminder that even time couldn't erase his artistry. Yet, as inspiring as that victory was, Silva made it clear that this phase wasn't about reclaiming fame. It was about closure, ending his combat journey on his own terms, not the way others demanded. Still, he's admitted that part of him struggles to let go. "Fighting is my therapy," he said. "When I stop, the silence hurts more than any punch." But Silva's battles today are less visible, emotional, internal, and deeply human. He's opened up about struggles with identity, about learning to live without the adrenaline, without the chaos of the fight world. He's spoken about aging, mortality, and the difficulty of finding peace after decades of war. His interviews today reveal a man who is still searching for meaning, for balance, for the next version of himself. Yet, there's wisdom in his words. "You can't be a champion forever," he says, "but you can be a good person forever." At 50, Anderson Silva has become something far more meaningful than just a fighter. He's a philosopher of combat, a man who learned that true battles aren't fought under bright lights. They're fought in silence, in the mind, and in the heart. His story is a testament to resilience, forgiveness, and the complexity of greatness. The broken leg, the losses, the controversies, they don't define him. What defines Anderson Silva is the courage to stand up again and again, no matter how painful the fall. The heartbreaking truth about Anderson Silva's journey is that it mirrors life itself. We rise, we fall, we break, and we rebuild. His story isn't about defeat, it's about humanity. Behind the legend of the Spider lies a humble man who still believes in love, in art, in faith, and in redemption. He once said, "When I fight, I try to show beauty, not violence." And in a world that often celebrates brutality, that quote says everything about who Anderson Silva truly is. So, if this story moved you, remember this. Legends aren't remembered just for how they win, but for how they endure. Anderson Silva's tale is not one of tragedy. It's one of transformation. He taught us that even when your body breaks, your spirit can still rise. And that is the untold, heartbreaking, but beautiful truth of the spider.